Good afternoon, Jets Nation. Welcome to the Drew Jets Show. And it's that time of year whenever teams have to cut their rosters down from 90 players to 53. So here's my New York Jets 53-man roster prediction. Starting off with the offense. At quarterback, I have Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson making it, which doesn't need much explanation. Some people might have Tim Boyle making it, and I can see that. The Jets have kept 3 quarterbacks for the past 2 years, and along with the NFL implementing this new emergency quarterback role, it does make sense as to why someone would have Tim Boyle making it, but I just think there's a lot of talent on this roster that is more deserving a spot than Tim Boyle. At running back, I have Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook, Michael Carter, and Israel Abanikanda making it. Bam Knight is the odd man out of this group. Whenever we signed Dalvin Cook, it seemed like he was going to be cut just because of how the offseason was unfolding. You know, it was supposed to be Bam Knight versus Michael Carter. Who's going to win that race? And Michael Carter definitely clearly won it. Hopefully we can get Bam Knight back on the practice squad, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is claimed by another running back needy team. At wide receiver, I have Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, Mecole Hardman, Randall Cobb, and Xavier Gipson making it. Now, I could have picked Jason Brownlee, Malik Taylor, Irvin Charles, Alec Erickson instead of Xavier Gipson because there was just so many wide receivers on this roster that bought out this summer that made an interesting case to make the 53. But I think Xavier Gipson made the best case. He's been a great returner for the New York Jets all throughout these preseason games, and along with playing well on the offensive side of things. I mean, in our last game against the Giants, 7 catches, 79 yards, the definition of balling out. At tight end, I have Tyler Conklin, CJ Uzomah, and Jeremy Ruckert making it. Some people might have put Zach Kuntz here, and once again, I'm not mad at that. Joe Douglas has never cut a draft pick in his entire tenure as a general manager, so it would make sense if he were to continue that trend this year. But same thing with Tim Boyle. There's a lot of other players more deserving of a roster spot than Zach Kuntz, and that's why I have him cut, but definitely expect him to be back on the practice squad. Moving on to the offensive line, so I have Dwayne Brown, Lincoln Tomlinson, Connor McGovern, Elijah Vera-Tucker, Mekhi Becton, Billy Turner, Max Mitchell, Carter Warren, Wes Schweitzer, and Joe Tippmann all making the 53-man roster, but I do expect Carter Warren to be placed on IR. He's missed the past few weeks due to an injury. We haven't really gotten a timetable for his return, so I do think he's going to get placed on the injured reserve, which does open up a roster spot for the New York Jets. But I don't think there's much explaining to do about players that got cut. The guys that made the 53-man roster are pretty much all kind of guaranteed to be made. It's, universally realized these are the 10 guys that are going to be making the 53-man roster. And I do think these 10 guys are better than what the New York Jets had last year. On paper, it's definitely a better group, but throughout training camp, they were the weakest link on the roster. But things are trending in the right direction for the group. We just got Dwayne Brown back from the PUP list. Mekhi Becton earned himself back that starting right tackle spot. He's finally fully healthy. So things are trending in the right direction. Looking up for this offensive line. And I will say that they haven't looked terrible in our preseason games, the offensive line in general, which is obviously a good thing. But whenever it comes to game time, we better see this offensive line play a lot better than they were in our preseason games. And I do think the floor on this line is super high. I think they could be a top 10 unit in the NFL, but the ceiling is really low. So definitely just going to be interesting to see how the offensive line plays this upcoming year. Now moving on to the defensive side of things. On the defensive line, I have Quentin Williams, Al Woods, Quentin Jefferson, Solomon Thomas, Carl Lawson, John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, Michael Clemens, Will McDonald, and Bryce Huff all making the 53. And you could argue that so many other guys on this defensive line should have made it. Like, you could argue Bruce Hector, Tanzel Smart should be on the 53 just because of how dominant those guys were in the preseason. Really just the entirety of the Jets defensive line. Almost every single player balled out in every single preseason game. I mean, the Jets defensive line just looked like a complete mismatch out there against every team's backup and starting offensive line. They were balling each and every snap. And because of that, we're going to see a bunch of players on our defensive line get claimed by other teams. Moving on to the linebacker spot, I have CJ Mosley, Quincy Williams, Jamien Sherwood, and Zaire Barnes are making the 53. And I will say linebacker is the weakest link on the Jets defense. Not because of CJ Mosley or Quincy Williams. We know what they're about. They're a solid linebacker duo. But it's because of Jamien Sherwood. Because We don't know what he's going to be. He has never started an NFL game in his entire career. Last season, he primarily played special teams, didn't get a lot of defensive snaps, and in his rookie year, he tore his Achilles after week 4. So he's a very raw player, doesn't have a lot of actual in-game playing time. But the Jets believe in him so much they decided he's going to take Kwon Alexander's spot. They didn't re-sign Kwon Alexander. You know, he's bulked up a lot this offseason. He's played great in these preseason games, but it's going to be interesting to see how Jamien Sherwood actually looks in a live-action football game. At the cornerback position, I have Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter II, Brandon Echols, and Jimmy Moreland all making it. Brandon Echols is suspended for week 1, though, so he's going to be placed on the suspended list, which opens up another roster spot for the New York Jets. I don't think there's much explaining to do in the cornerback room either. Some people might have Bryce Hall on the roster over Jimmy Moreland, but I think Jimmy Moreland has been the better player this offseason, which is why I have him making it over Hall. And on to the safety spot, I have Jordan Whitehead, Tony Adams, Adrian Amos, Ashtyn Davis, and Jarek Bernard-Converse all making the 53. But Jarek Bernard-Converse will be placed on the PUP list. That once again opens up another roster spot for the New York Jets. And I will say, I did not have Ashtyn Davis making the 53-man roster at the start of training camp. You know, I made my own 53-man roster predictions ahead of training camp. Didn't have Ashtyn Davis making it, but I will say, throughout training camp, in these preseason games, he definitely has earned a spot. I mean, we knew heading into the offseason he was a solid special teams player, and everyone was thinking he was going to make it just because of his special team skills. But as a safety, being our backup safety, I don't think he's that terrible. You know, his biggest issue has always been the fact that he can't tackle. But in preseason, he's improved that skill. Didn't have a lot of missed tackles. Was making some great angles, was making some great plays, especially in that Buccaneers game. Ashtyn Davis bought out. Definitely think he deserved a roster spot. And then for special teams, that's self-explanatory. Kicker, Greg Zuerlein. Punter, Thomas Morstead. Long snapper, Thomas Hennessy. And then our special teams player, Justin Harding. But throughout the video, I said, you know, several guys had injuries and suspensions, which created roster spots for the New York Jets. In total, we had 3 open roster spots open for the New York Jets. So we're filling those 3 roster spots. I have Nick Baldwin and Trey Dean making it for the New York Jets. Definitely think Trey Dean deserves the roster spot after his very impressive preseason performance. Same thing with Nick Baldwin. He didn't really do too much in the preseason, but the Jets have seemed to carved out a role for Nick Baldwin in this offense. They want him a part of this offense, so I do think he ends up making the 53-man roster. And then for that final spot, I think the New York Jets either trade for a veteran wide receiver or claim one off the waiver wire. I mean, yeah, we very well could have filled that 6 wide receiver spot with a Jason Brown-Lee, a Malik Taylor, a Nervin Charles, and Alec Erickson. So many guys we could have filled that spot with. But Corey Davis retiring was, you know, big for the Jets. Corey Davis wasn't going to be the 6th wide receiver on the roster. He was going to have a big role in this offense. So we shouldn't replace him with somebody that would have been cut if Corey Davis didn't retire. We should replace him with someone that is a veteran in this league, has proven that he could be a solid player in the league before, has a track record, instead of just somebody that would have been cut if Corey Davis didn't retire. But overall, that's my 53-man roster prediction. Comment down below what you guys think, and I'm your host, Jewett, signing off for now. See you guys later. Peace.